Welcome back, Scallywags. In this video, I'm going to tell you why I switched from my Sony a7R5 to the Panasonic Lumix S5IIX. One of the biggest things that stood out to me was the price. Coming from the a7R5, the price was a huge factor. When I decided to actually look at replacing or changing from the a7R5 to a more video-centric camera, two things I wanted to consider were the price, simply because I did not want to pay out of pocket to whatever camera I decided to switch over to. I considered the Sony FX30 before I even ventured into another manufacturer, but one thing that stood out to me was, again, the price. At the time of this video, the Sony FX30 is at $1,798, so $1,800. And the Panasonic Lumix was on sale for, I believe, $2,000 or something like that. And to me, it was a no-brainer, given the fact that it's a full-frame camera. You still have the capability of recording in 4K. I know some of you tech nerds are going to be like, oh, but you get a crop if you decide to go to a 4K 60. Who gives a shit? The Sony a7R5 did the same thing. I don't care. It's not often that I use 4K 60. So it doesn't bother me. And besides, the Sony FX30 is a crop sensor camera anyway, APS-C. So, of course, they can't crop in. Well, technically they can, but natively, it still ends up being the same thing. 4K 60 on the S5IIX and the FX30 ends up being the same thing, APS-C mode. Doesn't matter. The second thing for me was also the cheaper lenses. Because Panasonic decided to partner up with several brands out there, like Sigma, Blackmagic, DJI, they decided to create this L-mount alliance. So that means for the same L-mount lenses, so long as the camera is an L-mount, all the lenses work across the board, right? Sigma, we all know, has some great lenses. They're sharp. The quality is amazing. As the years gone by, their autofocus motors and technology has improved, even with the new Sigma 24-70 Mark II, which is what I also ended up grabbing. It's just so freaking smooth. Secondly, you're not going to get the handicap that Sony puts on these third-party lenses when it comes down to focusing, focus speed, frames per second, shooting capability. So if I was to use this lens, let's say on a A9, whether it's the Mark 1, 2, 3, the A1, you can never really get the full benefit of using the full frames per second when continuous shooting. You're going to be handicapped. And again, it's not just on continuous shooting, but the autofocus system isn't. I believe that Sony just kind of holds back on some of their technology and some of their information from Tamron. Sigma Viltrox is another up-and-coming brand that's using autofocus. Samyang, Rokinon, which is the same thing. All these other ones, right? I don't think they fully release the information necessary for these third-party lenses to implement the full features of the autofocus capabilities and be as fluid as the Sony. And I get it. Sony doesn't want third-party lenses to encroach on their lineup, the G Master specifically. I did have the G Master 24-70 first gen. Also had the G Master 70-200. I've had the, the 14 to 24 f4 G lens. I've had the 85 1.8, which is considered a budget lens, but obviously everyone knows that lens is sharper than the first generation of the 85 1.4 G Master. Another thing I want to talk about is IBIS, in-body image stabilization. Let's be real with ourselves. Sony's in-body image stabilization might as well not exist. It is just so bad. It really is. I came from the first camera that I owned from Sony was the a6500, and I didn't know at the time about mirrorless cameras because I bought a Canon T5i as my first camera from Best Buy. Then I found out in Fresno, where I used to live, when I bought the Canon and the Sony, I didn't know about mirrorless systems until I actually went into a dedicated camera store, Horn Photo. I love you guys. If you guys get a chance, check out Horn Photo. They're off of Blackstone. I can't remember the other name of the street, but Blackstone, and I think it's Herndon in the plaza. Check them out. Amazing people. Stan and Shelly, love you guys. But I didn't know too much about mirrorless cameras, the systems and stuff like that. So when I started digging into it and I saw that Sony had in-body image stabilization, I was just blown away because obviously at the time DSLRs didn't have that. But needless to say, I believe Sony's in-body image stabilization, whether it's crop sensor cameras, full frame, it's just ass. It's non-existent, really. Now with the Panasonic Lumix S5IIX and all the other freaking Lumix cameras, it's just amazing. It's usable footage if you're vlogging, holding the camera straight out, and vlogging, talking, walking. It's usable footage. With the Sony, you can't do that. You might as well just walk around with the freaking gimbal because it's just garbage the moment you use the in-body image stabilization. It's just unusable. So that was another thing. I have a gimbal. I have the Moza Air 2, something like that. I don't know, but I've used it before. But this just minimizes my requirement of having to take a gimbal with me if I need it. And the most important feature is the ability to record OpenGate and RAW straight from the camera. Now, for those of you that don't know what OpenGate is, it is actually using the entire sensor, the 3:2 ratio of the full frame sensor, instead of every other manufacturer, to my knowledge, as far as full frame cameras are available and crop sensor, with the exception of Fuji, uses a 16:9 aspect ratio. So regardless if you're shooting 4K, 30, 24, 60, 120, it'll still do the aspect ratio. So what that means is if you wanted to shoot OpenGate 30, because this is limited at 4K 30 at OpenGate, it's a 3:2 aspect ratio. That means after the fact, you have the extra space on the top and bottom that you can reframe your images to a 16:9 or a 9:16 if you wanted to do social media. Instagram, what's that other one? Tickety Talkie, something like that. The 9:16 vertical. You don't have to take multiple recordings. You can just open your settings, change it to OpenGate. This is 6K OpenGate, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say it is, but now you don't have to do 2 takes. So for those guys that have the camera with the GoPro or something else on top of it, leave that shit at home. It's all in one. Record once, go into DaVinci Resolve, Adobe Premiere, Final Cut Pro, edit your image, and then do a second timeline, duplicate it in that ratio that you want, and boom, done. Easy. So, do you think I'm going to regret changing from years and years of Sony cameras to the Panasonic Lumix lineup? Leave your comments down below and let me know what you think. Until then, I'll catch you guys later.